thank you so much for joining me today. It's been awesome just getting to know you. Like, we've had a nice little chat before, and yeah, I'd absolutely love to hear from you about your journey, your business, Divorce Detox, and everything that you're up to at the moment, and how you're really like helping people like pull through like the tough times. And as we both know, it's not always a simple process. So yeah.
Great. Well, Arthur, thank you so much for the opportunity, and it's been an absolute pleasure having some time for you and I just to get to know each other and backgrounds and things of that nature. And for your folks who are joining the podcast itself, my background, I was trained originally as a paramedic. I started dating a partner, which you should never do, but I did. And so we were dating, and then from there we went and got married. And then I was teaching on the side, doing some publications, speaking at conferences, and life evolved. And I left the paramedic world in like roughly 2000 and moved on. And then we were married and we had a kid. And I won't drag everybody through the entire history of it all. Suffice to say that throughout my professional and personal career, we survived 3 layoffs from corporate America, which is just brutal. And that was before, during, and after divorce. And there's layers of complexity behind that. And then with the divorce itself, it was fairly amicable. So I got super lucky, in my opinion, there. We have 2 kids who are now grown, out of the house, doing their life, and they're thriving, doing very well. My ex and I continue to be in touch. We live in the same state still. We touch occasionally on things and just, everyday things. I think through my divorce experience, we were discussing earlier that we got married in 98, separated in 2009, technically. Paperwork didn't get signed until 2013, and there was a window of time in there that was some yo-yoing effects of the relationship, who's going to be living where, how this is all going to play out. And for myself, and with my divorce specifically, and part of going through a divorce detox is me pulling some band-aids off of some wounds, and me not realizing some of the emotional aspects of this whole thing and the mindset and how it impacts every other aspect of your life. At least it did for me. And I have some clients who is the same boat, and some friends the same boat. I completely underestimated that, and how we got to where Divorce Detox is now. And for your audience to be aware, yes, I still work corporate America, doing my thing in the healthcare side, and Divorce Detox is up running with clients, etc. And how this came to be was I had a mentor actually reach out to me back in late 2023 saying, "Paul, what are you doing?" And she's like, "I know you're writing articles and speaking and doing, guests on things, but we're going to mix this up on you. And let's find a new space where Paul can help people," because you got the healthcare experience, Paul. Let's do a mind mapping, see what focuses Paul has, and where do we go with Paul in the future, so you can continue to help people leveraging what you've learned over the years. And I never thought through this exercise divorce would be the theme that kept coming up. And it's not that it's bad. It's just I was thinking maybe it's gonna be some new sport thing or something. She's like, "No, your focus here, buddy," because she goes, "You have all this experience. You went from being a medic, you saw horrific things, you saw in the field the impact of when people tell about divorces with domestics and things like that, which you and I didn't even touch on earlier. And now you're in a position where you consider yourself to be surviving it. Let's take this thing. Let's put this together." And then, so I spent months and talking to other guys as well. So the stories that I include in Divorce Detox, there's just some videos in there. It's not just my stories though. I incorporate stories from other guys, what did work, what didn't work. In the program itself, the short version, there's 7 modules, and within each module, there's a bunch of lesson activities. Some are like where I'm outside because I enjoy being outside, getting fresh air, and I just do on the fly a little, hey, by the way, if you want to consider dating, do X, Y, and Z, or don't do A, B, and C. And then there's also content where I walk people through some very formal structured things, because this did not exist when I went through my divorce. And when I went through my divorce, I was grasping at straws like, oh my gosh, what do I do about this? What about this? And we used a mediator. And the reason I mentioned this is she actually gave us a checklist, which I'm like, a divorce checklist, what? And it saved me because you had to go through this whole piece of paper. So all of those pieces are included in this. And the other part of this that's been interesting is I've learned in the last year is there's not a lot of programs out there that are built like this by guys. And we include intentionally things on emotions, mindset, and heartset on all this stuff, because if your emotions are out of whack or your mindset's out of whack, it impacts everything else. And you may not realize it, but it does. And so that's how we got to where we're at today. And that's how you and I get introduced. And for the audience, just to be aware, Arthur has a fantastic background, and it was wonderful learning about his journey through life as well, and his potential new chapter coming up here. And I thank Arthur for sharing that. And so with that being said, Arthur, I'll give it back to you, and feel free to ask a question or which direction you want to take.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you so much like that for like an introduction and explanation of everything that you're doing is like really, really awesome. And I think like one thing for me is going through the process myself of like a long-term relationship separation. It is these things that like you don't know about, and like, you know, you don't really get that support. Like it's just go see a lawyer and figure it out. And that's one thing that I've not done. But I think having a community that has a group of guys going through the same thing is really, really valuable. And because it actually, like, from the mental health side of things, like for me, having people which have gone through the similar things or are going through similar things is really good to like connect with them and feel like you're not alone on the journey. Because for so long I felt super alone on that journey, and that really impacted my mental health as well. It's like your world is completely collapsing, but everyone else's world is just moving forward just as normal. And that's like a really scary feeling to have, like when you realize that like no one else really cares because everyone's just dealing with their own shit. So yeah, that was like I love what you're doing, and I love the fact that it's aimed to help people using your own experience, and yeah, like helping people for me has been one of the best things to actually overcome some of my personal struggles. So yeah, that's really, really awesome. Now for you, like you mentioned, you were married from 1998 through to 2009, but you know, you got divorced in 2013. What was the, like for you, what was the process like in those like years of you're separated but you're not quite finalized with that? For me, it's been like an up and down mental health journey. You said as well, like you separated amicably, which has been good as well. But throughout that process, there's obviously like emotions that run through that. What were the sort of challenges you faced personally during that process?
Sure, and I'll reference back a little bit to what we said before as far as some terms that we use and things like that, because it's relevant to this. And so the time frame of married in 98, you get kids, you get separated in 2009, and you don't get papers signed until 2013, and there may be sliding of dates and things in here, but this is in my head how my gears work. You can't help where if you, in my opinion, if you have a relationship that's ongoing and lingering, and some of your audience may be saying, well, Paul, they're trying to reserve it or salvage it. I get that. But if you as a guy, and there's a concept called offensive defense, which plays into part of this as well, whoever initiates, hey, I want out, is the offensive person, and the offensive person has an idea in their head of what they want, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3. The defensive person, who may not have seen this coming, is now, whoa, I didn't see this coming. What does he or she want? And now how do I catch up? Because I need to be able to manage what they're presenting to me, excuse me, and how do I react? The other part of this, and for us, the way our relationship was, there wasn't really an offense or a defense. I'll be very candid. It was basically, we're pretty much done. And we're like, yeah, we're going to just do this, and we're going to do it mutually, which is fine to say that and go down that path. The part for me that was painful, divorce is painful in general. And so specific to paper being signed 1 year, years later, paper being signed, is this concept called a yo-yo, where you might be in and you have waves and things, and the kids are involved too. And people say to me, kids are resilient. Yeah, but they hear things, they see things, they perceive things. And I always made my kids, whenever I had to make a decision regarding my divorce or my relationship with my ex, I always said, what's best for the kids? Because she and I are going to recover. We're going to go on. But we got 2 kids that are going to live with us the rest of their lives. And I want to minimize the negative impacts on them. And I made errors throughout the process. It's just human nature, at least for myself, it is. I think part of what I completely underestimated through this entire process was the emotional draw that, yeah, when I got home the first night after getting separated and she moved out with the kids, and I come home to a 4-bedroom house that's now silent, because you go from having kids in the house, family, activities, friends, now it's nothing. That's painful. But the part I completely underestimated was at my 9 to 5 in corporate America, plugging away, realizing oh gosh, I have mediation in an hour. And now all of a sudden my mind's spinning is I have a report due in an hour. I have mediation in 2 hours. Damn it. I got to get through this. And so for me, it was a conflict internally. And I actually was called out by a couple different people, both personally and professionally, of are you okay? And what's going on, which I did not realize. And so I try to be now very aware of my emotions, how I'm coming across to people, because to your point earlier, you got XYZ going on in your world. Well, guess what? The person sitting next to you and across from you, they have stuff going on too. So be respectful from that perspective. I think to tie all this together here, the yo-yo effect, if when a relationship is coming up to close, I can honestly say now, just close it, because dragging it out, you're not helping yourself. And as much as you may want it, if there's a bigger, better vision that you can see of yourself, you want to get there cleanly. So end what you have and go forward. Never says it's going to be easy. There's not going to be days that aren't great, but at least take the steps to protect yourself, and not just asset wise, but your emotions, your mindset, and your heart set. You and I talked about the emotional wheel. I'm going to touch on this briefly here because this is super important. And I was introduced to this concept by a friend of mine. He and I were talking about divorce and things like that. And his middle school daughter came home with an emotional wheel. And in the middle of this wheel, and we include this in Divorce Detox, it's something is right. You have an emotion, something feels like X, Y, and Z. And so it takes you from what you're feeling in the hub to a spoke going out where it explains why all of a sudden your hands are sweaty and maybe why you're anxious because you're stressed, versus the I'm having a blast and my hands are dry and I'm smiling and I feel light because life is good. And you don't realize, at least I didn't, the ramifications. And it's such a common sense tool. But when you're super emotional, high stressed, and your mind is spinning 1,000 miles an hour, that is not the time to be signing paperwork, in my opinion. You got to sit back, take a breath. Do not start texting. Don't get on social media. And the reason I'm sharing all this with you, your listeners, is because this has happened. And I've had people come up to me saying, I did all that. I'm like, gotcha. Well, it is what it is. You got to move forward from that. So I think for myself, recognizing those elements of divorce that I didn't realize could be a potential outside of the traditional budgets, assets, child support, spousal support, I completely was not aware of that. That was a huge, wow. I'm like, I didn't know this. Now I do. Yeesh.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, really good point. And like with the feelings wheel, I think that's like a really good visual tool for us that we can use to check in on ourselves, right? Like that's the emotional check-in. That's how we can self-reflect. And I think like where you say is don't do anything drastic, don't message, don't go on social, don't, try to process something whilst you're emotional, is because like emotional doesn't lead to logical actions.
Correct.
Right? And so I think it's about regulating our system, or like becoming more regulated so we can make these logical decisions. And we mentioned it a little bit earlier as well around like the croc-brain, which is just like your decision maker. It's like I want to fight or I want to like procreate, pretty much. And then like if you're just like, that's probably more the defensive side, right? So something's happening and like it's coming at you, you're like fighting straight away. And we don't want that. Right. And then we move down into like the mammalian brain, which is like the emotional processing sort of side of things. And again, like that doesn't do us any good either, because when we're emotional, we can't think through logically. We can't make these logical decisions. So it's about regulating our nervous system, regulating ourselves, so we can get into a position of actually making good decisions based on information, fact, and so on. And like, so going back to the feelings wheel is a really good way to check in on ourselves and recognize what do we need to do for us to get us to a point where we can process what's happening, and then we can make actions based on that.
And I think one thing that you and I were talking about earlier that ties in perfectly right here, that I wish guys would do more. I wish anybody going through divorce, male or female, would do more of this. This is taking care of yourself first. And you like to be outside. I like to be outside. And when you're super stressed, for me, when I'm super stressed, the best thing I can do is get away from whatever's stressing me and just walk and just take a deep breath and do that. I'm an avid cyclist. I'm an avid inline skater with poles. I'm that geek. But for me, that is I get in the zone and I unwind and I relax, and it works for me. I And I always encourage my clients as well. I say, if there's something you do, it doesn't have to be going outside. It could be needlepoint. It doesn't matter. If there's something you do that helps bring you down, do that, because when you're supercharged, people are going to see it. And if you have kids in your marriage and you're supercharged and you're having a conversation, what have you, be aware of that as well. The other thing we didn't talk about this, that I would be very cautious of for guys when you're going through a divorce. And even if you're entering a divorce or just after divorce, and you're now going to be at a family gathering of sorts where you have mixture, combination of events, could be holidays, what have you, and everyone may not be aware of what's going on with your marriage. That was the case with me. Some did, some didn't. I had to be in my emotional A game, where I drank very little at the holiday event. I'm not a big drinker anyways, but it was very close, because I needed to make sure that I was touching everything as I go.
Yes.
And I can tell you that when we were getting separated, I attended a wedding with my ex at the time. I don't think we had kids at the time. Actually, I think, yeah, we did. And I remember walking into the wedding event, beautiful ceremony, and I started to burst into tears because I was sober the whole 9 yards. And this is talk about the emotions. And I realized afterwards, I'm done. Our marriage is done. And it was one of those scenarios where people are like, what the heck is up with Paul? I'm like, excuse me, I need to go to the bathroom. And this is a true story. Actually, I think this is the first podcast I've ever this actually came up because of that, the intensity of the emotions and how all of a sudden it hits. And for guys, just to be aware that these things can happen. It's nothing bad with it. Just, be aware. And the next day, I apologized to certain folks. And I said to my immediate family, I said, we're having a hard time and probably going to divorce, but that's, I think, what triggered it. So sharing some insights there on a very personal level, but it's the reality of a relationship that's breaking up after X number of years and kids.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I had a very similar experience as well. And it's so hard. Like I completely get it. Like when we separated, like in that first stint, like she moved out, and during that time she moved out for the first time. We had 2 birthdays, a wedding, and family Easter. Like in the in the time that we were like not together, but we sort of still
you put on the facade, correct?
And it's so hard, because like as men, we're taught to be strong, and like what strong is not showing your emotions, like traditionally.
Yeah.
And I remember just being there and feeling so out of place, like particularly with wedding, because you're like, you feel out of place, and you go back to the day you were married and how beautiful, and now you're looking at it from the lens of, this is so beautiful, but I'm about to lose this.
Right.
And that's just like soul destroying. It's like heartbreaking, and it's really, really difficult. But yeah, so I'm really happy you shared that, because it's so relatable. And this is the thing, like a separation isn't sometimes just so simple as, oh, we're separating and I'm never going to see you again. Sometimes the separation is, yeah, we're separating, but we have got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do that.
Correct.
Because and like in our case, it probably was more so because we weren't ready to like discuss it with anyone else. It was quite fresh.
Yeah.
But like, you're going through it, you're still going through those feelings and those emotions, and
absolutely,
and what's the alternative to that is not turning up and then dealing with all those emotions like immediately. Correct. Which is so difficult. So yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing, because it's really challenging, difficult time. So.
And for your audience to be aware, so when your kids grow up, or as your life evolves, depending upon factors with everyone. So recently, when my daughter graduated from college, she went to school out of state. So I'm the guy who's divorced with an ex, with a son, ex-in-laws, etc. And the short version is, we collectively as a group decided to travel together from one state to another on the same flight, the same rental cars, the same hotel, the same meals. And I said, it's for my daughter. And it was amicable. We enjoyed it. We celebrated it. And it truly was, the trip was awesome. It was so cool. And we all got along, and we were fortunate. There wasn't any animosity. I even sat next to my ex-mother-in-law. We were congenial for a half hour before the ceremony, shooting the breeze and getting caught up. She heard about my stuff. I learned about where she was at with things and all like that. Same with my, my father-in-law. It's possible, and people may be saying, "Man, Paul, you live in a Fantasia there in Colorado," and it's just part of it's just perspective on how your relationship is, and not everyone's going to have what I have, and everyone's relationship is different. It is possible, but some divorces are vindictive. I have a family member whose divorce was horrible, absolutely horrible. I won't get into the details, and it's yin and yang. And to this day, my girlfriend's like, "How are you still so?" She's like, "I think it's great that you and your ex are nice, but that's not normal." I'm like, "No, it's no two divorces are the same, and you just can't predict how it's going to play out. And when those curveballs come, it's not so much the curveball; it's more how do you react to said curveball."
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring a really good point there, because I don't think anything is normal. Like, what is the societal expectation is if you're going through a separation, you have to hate each other. I don't agree with that, particularly if there's kids. But even if there aren't kids, me and my ex, we had a dog together, and he's still around and stuff. So it's good to like see my dog, like my boy, he's awesome. But even without that, what my belief is personally is, if you had the capacity to love someone, you should always respect that love, regardless of what happens. Now, the exceptions are, of course, like domestic violence or like serious levels of abuse. But if the reason why I feel things go bad is because, first of all, it's an emotional shock. Our hopes and our expectations have been destroyed, shattered, and because of that, we don't know how to process it. So we're extra emotional. We're in that fight flight mode, and if we're not fighting or fleeing, we're freezing. But normally it's that fight flight. And so if someone's reacting with a fight flight, then that gets our guard up, and they're reacting with a fight flight as well. And that's where things escalate and get bad. So I think the number one step is like coming down, emotionally regulating, bring ourselves to a state of where we can make logical decisions. Like you said, take that moment to recognize, cool down, and then act with logic. And from that, I reckon we would have so many more amicable separations, because once we're reacting, or not even reacting, but once we're processing from a place of logic and a place of, oh, I love this person, this is why I love this person, it's not working out anymore because they did XYZ. Recognizing that XYZ is, and our reaction to that is just our emotional processing. If we can apply logic, we're then better off in a place where we can understand it and understand it, and then bring acceptance to that, and then move forward amicably. It's so nice to know that the person I used to love so much is doing well, is healthy, happy. That's like such a good reward of having the amicable separation. Now, some people might disagree and go, no, once they're done, it's done, and that's fine.
Correct.
But I don't believe there's a space for hate. Like, hate is a strong feeling, and I think it's coming from like that emotional dysregulation in that process.
And the you bring up some super good points there, and I'm gonna add a couple of things to this real quick. Is that some people are scarred, and they're scarred for life, and they're not going to get over it for whatever reason. And I also, through Divorce Detox, in my own experience, I went to a therapist just to make sure my head was okay. And I encourage guys, at least go once, just check in to make sure things, because I never been through divorce. I've been through once. I don't plan on doing it again. And it's one of those, just to make sure my head's intact correctly. The other thing that I'll share with the group here, and this is reality, and what you just described with the emotional intensity and levels and things like that, I will share that as a paramedic, I saw the complete opposite of what you just described. And we would get called to domestic violence situations where substance abuse, regardless whether it's legal or illegal, as soon as you start putting substances on top of emotions, that's a toxic combination. And people can do and say things that they would normally never do. But once the word is spoken, the fist is thrown, and I'm not trying to be a downer on this podcast. This is just reality. That's off a whole other cascading side of effects. And it's a world of unfortunateness that exists in the world. And that's why if if guys can, from the word go, with being told that they're either triggering it on the offensive or receiving as the defensive, protect yourself. If you have kids, protect your kids. Try to be as amicable as possible. And I realize there's scenarios out there that people do nasty things, and you may say, "No way, I'm done." That's fine. At least cut your losses early. And I'm not saying do it quickly and fast, but do it cleanly and with your integrity. Because if you do have kids, they're going to see what you're doing. And regardless of what you and I say here today, any guy who goes through a divorce is going to get through the end of his divorce. And I've yet to meet anyone who's been through a divorce or a separation where they don't receive unsolicited feedback from either friends or families once the whole thing is signed and done and signed. Because people, they may have opinions they never share with you because you were married and you put on the facade at Thanksgiving, you put on the facade at First Communion, things like that. Other part of this to consider as well that you and I didn't touch on, but we alluded to a little bit. Just because I signed my divorce papers on date X, it's not that day and you're done. You're divorced for life. And so when I have clients who've been divorced more than 2 times or 3 times, what have you, and they're going through another one, I'm like, go see a lawyer, because you got to go back and figure out what you put on paper for these other divorces. And they had those individuals who are going through that have bits and pieces of other lives that they're taking with them going forward. And it can get complicated. And I'm not making light of it by any stretch. People have to do what they do in life and make decisions. It's just when you start talking in the world of yourself, where you want to have community, adventure, and education, and finding betterness through your rural communities and going through and helping, you discover these type of things. When we're talking about the realistic reality of divorce, you find out not all marriages are great, not all divorces are pretty, but you go through and you figure it. And the other part of this, I would really emphasize for guys and females as well. I've actually been approached by some females for a variety of different levels on this program. You can also consider divorce as a new chapter, and it's a fresh new start. You don't have to hate your ex. You can still be in touch. And if you have kids, you're always going to have kids as a mutual combination. How you choose to react to that is up to you. But consider it as a new chapter and take a fresh, deep breath and go forward. Consider going to see some counseling and go forward. And if you find out you get halfway through your divorce proceedings, you're like, why are we doing this? We're so much happier married. Go see a marriage counselor, go visit someone who specializes, and see if you can unwind it, because no one gets married with the intent of getting divorced.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's such a good point, because sometimes it's like the process of going through it is the thing that saves it.
Correct.
In a way. You recognize like what you're leaving behind, what you're missing out on, and like you're letting go of like the hopes and dreams that you may have had, those expectations. And so like it's a really good point that potentially you could bring it back through that. But again, of course, it's about looking after yourself as well. Like looking after yourself is number one, because no one else does. And even what you said with the unsolicited advice, I definitely had that, and I was like, oh, cheers, like thanks for that.
Like, wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, I had a few where I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. And I had a few I was like, yeah, I get it. So it's all that. It's an unfortunate evolution in a marriage, in a relationship. And guys, you shouldn't feel like a failure. I mean, these things happen, and you can't predict what's going to happen. And whatever your scenario is, whatever your situation is, and again, Arthur and I both said the same thing. It's not so much the event, but how do you react to the event and how do you move forward? And if you have kiddos, I always tell people, make kids the priority, and regardless of their age. Obviously the younger kids need special other considerations versus the adults that are growing up and moving out of the house. And I'll share with the group here, my divorce wasn't perfect, but it was pretty darn clean in my opinion. It was amicable, and more than once my daughter has said to me, Dad, I still can't believe you guys, because she has friends whose parents are divorced and they can't be in the same room, and it's years and it's one of those things. So it's a lot of opportunity for guys to take a deep breath and go forward. And it's easy for me to sit here and say this as Arthur and I are talking, but the reality is, what's the flip side if you don't do that? Could you make it worse? Potentially, yeah, you could. And you could complicate what could be somewhat amicable and getting through it versus making it a disaster, and people start screaming, yelling, and hiding assets and making phone calls and texting. And I won't tell you the stories. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point as well. Is like anytime with kids, they're so impressionable, and ultimately it comes down to like leading by example.
Correct.
You know, like if you like I feel everyone should lead by example every day of their lives, you know, because you never know who's watching and who's keeping tabs.
Correct.
But leading by example, particularly for children or kids, is so important, because you want them to know that they're safe, and like you want to leave them with like maybe a good outcome regardless of the negative outcome, in a sense, you know. So I definitely feel like that's a super important thing. But yeah, no, it's a very interesting topic, divorce, separation, the emotional roller coaster that we all go through. And yeah, I mean, for me, it's been, you know, it still goes on, but it's part of the journey. And I think like you said, it's a really good opportunity. First of all, it's a growth opportunity for you. But then it is like that opportunity to start a new chapter. Like for me, when my relationship ended, I looked at all the things that I wanted to do in my life that maybe I wasn't able to do whilst I was in that relationship.
Right.
So I went and started doing them. You know, I started actually going, oh, okay, like I've always wanted to go back to England. I live in Australia, and I haven't had the opportunity to do that. And so that was like one of the first things I did, you know.
Nice.
And doing the things for me that I knew were important for me, that, you know, when you're in a relationship, you have to compromise. You might not be able to do things. You have other people to consider. And like for me, like that opportunity to start fresh is exactly why I started Just Another Moment, essentially, because now I had the time. I didn't have the financial commitments. I didn't have the other person to like consider. And I was able to sit down and go, well, this is what I need to do. And that's why I've started what I've started. And you know, how I'm able to, you know, take people on cool trips around the world and help people like through their health journey, regardless if they're married or separated or just cruising on their own.
Exactly.
Everyone to some extent has some sort of challenge or struggle, and it's like the identification, the awareness, the acceptance, and then flow through that process of how can we challenge that and how can we grow as a result. So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Same.
I really appreciate your time today. I know we only scheduled like a little bit, but yeah, I've really definitely enjoyed it. Where can people find you if they did want to look into your community and jump in, get involved, and so on?
Sure. So the website itself is Divorce Detox with 2 X's at the end.com. And I can be reached at info@divorcedetox.com. And if people are interested, I have a freebie out there as well. What I'll do is I'll copy this information here. And if I can do this without messing up and my battery doesn't totally die here, I will put it in chat. Let me see something real quick. This meeting. Where's the chat? Where is me?
It should be at the bottom, right?
Right there. Hello. Boom.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, I encourage folks to reach out if they want. I'll be happy to chat and go from there. And Arthur, you and I can talk some more at the end of this, because actually something that came to me here that may be a bit mutual benefit as well for us with where you're at and with where things are heading as well.
Yeah, no, perfect. Well, yeah, definitely appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, we'll keep connected.
Most definitely. Thanks everyone for their time. Arthur, appreciate it again. Look forward to future discussions. Thanks everyone.